Thanks a lot for coming. First of all, happy Earth Day, everyone, April 22nd. Before I start diving into budgetary details and comparing the Green Party of Canada platform and budget to those of the Liberals, New Democrats, and today, last minute surprise, Pierre Poilievre has released his platform and budget numbers. I wanted to review something that's, I think, quite significant, and that is that over the decades, the Green Party of Canada has been the first to promote and propose some really transformative changes, some important ideas, and we have never minded when other parties take our ideas. So the purpose of today's press conference is to address Mr. Carney, in particular, Prime Minister Carney, Mr. Poilievre, Leader of Official Opposition, Mr. Singh, Mr. Blanchet, and all Canadians, to say it's time again for some of the other parties to take our ideas. We're offering them to you on a silver plate. Now, just to review some of the things that we have said in the past that you'll find in the platforms of the other parties now, we were the first party to call for the significance of an east-west electricity grid that actually functions. You find now that Mr. Carney is saying we need this really important energy corridor. You could also have found it in our 2019 climate plans, that without a functioning east-west, north-south electricity grid, you really can't get to the carbon neutrality that Canada has committed to over the years. And it's a fantastic idea, and it goes back to that fundamental point that underscores and underlines our platforms since 2015, that Canada has to act like a country. And to do that, we have to think like a country. We've never before seen such a focus on the problem of the non-collaborative nature between the different orders of government as we have since the Trump tariff threats. We're now seeing everybody, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, saying it's time to end interprovincial trade barriers. It's time to get interprovincial cooperation. Nowhere is that more critical than in our electricity grid. So again, that's been Green Party platform from at least 2019, 6 years, and we're glad other parties are catching up with us. Another one that was in our 2015 platform, and we were the first party to promote this, is National Pharmacare, Universal Single-Payer Pharmacare. We're the only country that has a universal health care program that doesn't have pharmacare. Now, I know the NDP will say, well, that was Tommy Douglas's idea. And yes, Tommy Douglas is a hero, and much revered by, I think, most Canadians for what he did for this country. But it had been a very long time, and in fact, we were the first party to put universal pharmacare in our platform back in 2015, based on the study done by a number of academics across Canada, including Steve Morgan at UBC, called Pharmacare 2020. That's how long ago it was, when 2020 was still ahead of us. We also were the first party to call for a wealth tax. It was in our 2019 platform. And again, we were the first party in this election to have studies about our costings placed on the PBO website. Now, once something is posted on the Parliamentary Budget Office website, it's in the public domain and anyone can use it. So our wealth tax numbers were published on April 9th. The NDP platform came out after that, and in debates locally where my NDP opponent says, we're the only party calling for a wealth tax. I say, yeah, well, no. And also we posted it publicly first. When we're looking at other issues over time, where we have been the first and now it's accepted as normal Canadian policy. We were the first party to call for equal marriage. We were the first party to call for legalizing cannabis. We remain, as far as I know, the only party calling for a guaranteed livable income. We are the first party to call for a green tax shift, taking taxes off things we want, like income, and putting it on pollution. As I said to Stéphane Dion over at the time, if you're going to take our ideas, that's okay, but please don't mess them up. Please know how to communicate them. So we've now seen all the efforts to include carbon pricing in climate policy essentially renounced by all parties in this election other than the Greens. Now, when we look at the things we've advocated in the past that are now accepted within Canada, we now ask again, please look at our platform. Please look at our budget and look at it carefully. I want to highlight a few of the things that would really help Mark Carney's budget balance sooner and without taking shots, because what's really important, I think we're still Team Canada. I don't want to take any unfair shots at anyone. I do want to highlight that the Parliamentary Budget Office does extraordinary work. Today, for the first time, a number of studies from PBO asked for by the Conservatives have been posted. As far as I can see, none of them justify the effort the Conservatives have made today to say that their cuts in spending and various tax changes will result in $21 billion of new tax revenue by 2028, 2029. That's reported by the Globe and Mail as the Conservatives are betting on increased tax revenue of $21 billion a year by 2028, 2029. There are a number of changes that they've made, yes, and the number of changes were reviewed by PBO, but at least at this point, looking at the PBO website, we can't find that conclusion of the Conservatives is other than their internal hunch that will create that kind of benefit. I also want to be very clear about what the Parliamentary Budget Office does and what it doesn't. It's an extraordinary thing, and many Canadians may not know, that all federal political parties have access to Parliamentary Budget Office analysis, top-notch tax advice and fiscal advice, and it has to be nonpartisan. So they seek the parties' permissions to publish what they publish. They're in the public domain. So that's when we put forward what a wealth tax would generate in the public domain with all the details on April 9th. It's worth knowing that public domain money would generate wealth taxes, only on net household worth of over $10 million, going up to a higher tax bracket of 3% for those in the $50 million to $100 million range, will generate $121 billion by 2030. That's in the public domain. Other parties can use that number. The wealth tax is an important part of new revenue for the Government of Canada. Extraordinarily, something that has been in the public domain as a discussion item for decades. We're the first party to actually look at it and what would it generate. And this is particularly important, again, for other party leaders who have increased spending. Mr. Carney has $130 billion a year in increased spending. We, of course, have to cover the things that we're proposing. So again, to the question of social equity, we announced this weeks ago, to help the lowest income wage earners in Canada, the Green Party of Canada will eliminate income tax for those who are earning $40,000 a year or less. Not a tax cut. Eliminate personal income tax if you're earning less than $40,000 a year. Now, we're able to cover that entirely with what I'm going to talk about next, which is a really big idea, really significant for Canadians to know. The Green Party is paying attention to affordability issues. We don't want people who are just scraping by to have to pay personal income tax. Corporations need to pay their fair share. But this next item, financial transaction tax, is a surefire winner. Canadians won't feel it at all. It won't even pinch the pocketbook at all. It's called a financial transaction tax. It was first proposed decades ago by Nobel Prize-winning economist, the late James Tobin. The idea is that when the money's clicking through financial markets, you change in the value of making billions on what the yen is worth in the morning, what the dollar is worth at night. Every transaction, every time you're changing currency, or bond traders, we would put a tax on every transaction of 0.35%. Now, what that comes to, in numbers people can identify quickly, is that for every transaction of $100, there'd be a 35-cent tax. Even the bond traders won't really feel it. You'd have to be someone like George Soros trading hundreds of billions of dollars a day to even notice it. And then he'd hardly go broke. The reality is that by shifting some of the taxation off personal income and on to speculative financial transactions of the high rollers at 35 cents for every $100 of transaction, the financial transaction tax generates by 2029 to 2030 per year $90 billion. Imagine that. 35 cents on every $100 in a financial transaction. And this, again, over a 5-year period, cumulatively, $279 billion. That's why we're able to project a $1.4 billion deficit. We don't get to a balanced budget within 5 years, but we get closer even than the Conservatives. And these are based on studies done by the Parliamentary Budget Office. They're all public. I really urge the other party leaders to have a look and take it seriously. People don't expect the Green Party of Canada to be the party that comes up with the most practical, innovative solutions for how to grow an economy and fight Donald Trump. Now, on the fight Donald Trump front, I just want to review, the Green Party again has some very exciting ideas. We announced them in Nanaimo back on March 29th, creating strategic reserves for Canadian raw resources. But I specifically want to mention one idea in particular that we mentioned that day and got very little attention. We used to buy Canada savings bonds. We call them Saving Canada bonds, where every Canadian can buy a bond and, for instance, help the government of Canada buy up the potash. Why potash? It's not going to be enough to take on a bully like Trump, to go into a ring and say, for every punch you deliver us, we're going to punch you right back equally hard. The bully in the ring with us is 10 times bigger than we are. That's not a fight we can win. Retaliatory tariffs are good in making it clear to the United States that we're not going to be pushed around. But if you take on a bully 10 times your size, you got to be prepared to, well, I don't know, it sounds mean, do the equivalent of sticking fingers in his eyes. You have to make it hurt. Canadian Saving Canada bonds in holding Canadian potash here, north of the border. For the growing season of 2025, U.S. farmers have already bought up the potash they need. But if we buy up the potash for their next growing season and say, well, you know, it's not something we're selling this year. It's tied up in our Saving Canada bonds. Every Canadian could buy Saving Canada bonds, help us buy up the potash, and have a solid, committed 5% rate of return. It's a good investment. It's an investment in Saving Canada. That's just one of the ways the strategic reserves of Canadian resources can not only help us take on Donald Trump, can help us make sure he runs away screaming. I know that sounds mean, but it's a nice image. We also underpin all of this with a transformative approach to how our various orders of government should work together. Now, this has been in our platforms since 2015, but I just want to say how important it is for us to get accountability right. The provinces, for instance, have had a 4-fold increase in transfers from the federal government for health care, but health care from the provinces has not gone up 4-fold since 2020. We know that the trans and interprovincial non-tariff trade barriers reduce the size of our economy by $200 to $300 billion a year. We've kind of got unanimity on that now within Team Canada. All party leaders are talking about, let's get rid of interprovincial trade barriers. That's a good thing. Why are they there? Because we don't coordinate well at all. We need to bring in a Council of Canadian Governments where the federal government is at the table working with provincial and territorial governments and the left outside of decision-making, most responsible order of government, local governments, mayors and councils that have to really deliver for the people who live in their communities but don't have access to the tax dollars they need for the investments they need to make, and Indigenous governments. So picture a circle, 4 quadrants, and this is what they do in Australia. They bring to one table the people who make the decisions and say, we need to, by consensus, all of us agree, what is our national goal for energy? What's our national goal for transportation? What's our national goal on climate? Healthcare. Now, that 4-quadrant circle would come together frequently and as they do in Australia, one big table for national goals and sub-tables when you're dealing sector by sector, healthcare, education, and so on. I will just close by saying again, we believe that accountability and revised ethic codes are also essential so that the Canadian public can again feel trust in their government and in their public institutions. There's a lot to cover here because we have a very long platform. Canadians can find it on our website. our platform has the costing items from the Parliamentary Budget Office that relate to where we find the revenue. The individual platform items are our own estimates, not costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office. To be clear, in the background documents, you'll see highlighted in different colors what's been costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office and what hasn't. It's not as easy to do that when you're looking at the other party platforms, but we believe in full transparency and our own accountability as we put forward these really solid, good, exciting ideas to revitalize the Canadian economy, to create economic sovereignty for Canada so that we're no longer hewers of wood and drawers of water for foreign transnational corporations. But we protect our workers, we protect our communities, we protect our economy, and we spend more where Trump spends less. We spend more where Pierre Poilievre wants to cut. We spend more for the CBC. We spend more for overseas development assistance because now that Donald Trump has killed the U.S. AID program, and Pierre Poilievre thinks there are savings to be had in taking programs that help educate women and girls, fight malaria around the world, fight HIV/AIDS. That's where Pierre Poilievre thinks we've got to cut. Any place Trump is cutting, Canadians, pull together. We got to step up. The U.S. used to be the cop of the world. Now it's the bully of the world. We've got to do more than protect ourselves. We've got to step up for all the countries on earth that are in Donald Trump's crosshairs, for the poorest of the poor that he is targeting. We have to do more for international development assistance. That's why we needed to bring in financial transaction taxes, wealth taxes, increase corporate tax rates, and ensure that the government of Canada has more public money while each individual Canadian has more personal money. It's doable. But you've got to really think outside the box. And the Green Party is really good at that. Open for any questions you might have.
I'm wondering, you laid us very detailed economic ideas here. I'm also wondering, you talked about Donald Trump and responding to the bully that he's behaving as. When you're at the doorsteps, we're 6 days away from the big day. How much are you hearing in your writing that the big issue for voters there is responding to Donald Trump and his tariffs and sovereignty threats?
I hear a lot of very deep anxiety, and I'd have to say the anxiety and the fear is almost amorphous. So people don't, they say, oh my God, south of the border. And they say, oh my God, Pierre Poilievre. But then they also say, why is no one talking about climate? So there's a mix of things at the doorstep. So more than issues, what I feel at the doorstep is emotion. People come out to talk to me. Quite often they just come out to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. When I'm depressed, all I do is I go watch that video of you telling Donald Trump California could be the 11th province. I also have never had a time when I've gone door to door where people are so emotional that after talking to me for a while, I realize it's not making them feel better. They look like they're closer to breaking down in tears. It's very unusual. I've never canvassed before where I leave the doorstep, instead of saying, would you like a lawn sign, I say, would you like a hug? So I end up feeling a lot of love and a lot of hugs, and hang on, we're going to be okay. There's no point being afraid. There's no point voting out of fear. Really, we are so lucky to be Canadians. Remind us all of that every day. Imagine being a trans youth in the United States, or a person of color going off to worship at your house of worship and not knowing if the immigration raid is going to grab you that day and send you to a prison in El Salvador, where it doesn't seem to even matter if the U.S. Supreme Court says that's against the law. I'm much more concerned for people living south of the border. Living north of the border, we're in the promised land, and we can get through this.
Just by way of follow-up, I had the chance to speak to you the other day, and you said he's being allocated being like a job interview.
Yeah, it is.
Which is an interesting way of putting it. How's the job interview going? Do you think you're in a tight race with the Conservative.
Yeah.
Talk about fear of Trump and maybe intentionally fear of Poilievre.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to win on Monday?
Well, I'd say one thing, and an election campaign is a very long job interview. So I think it's really quite shameful that Cathy Umstead doesn't show up for any of the interviews. She ditched the interview, she's only been to one, she hasn't been to any of the public all-candidate meetings. She went to one that was at a private residence of Berwick at Royal Oak, and we haven't seen her since. she's it's neck and neck between me and Kathy Unstead. So she's not showing up. What does that say? At the Saanich Inlet Protection Society debate that we had on, what wasn't really a debate, it was all candidate meetings at the Saanich Fairgrounds, hosted by the Saanich Inlet Protection Society. The excuse that was offered by the moderator was that the Conservative candidate had gotten back to them and said she had a prior commitment on Pender Island. She had a meet and greet on Pender Island, and it was at a local pub where she charged $35 a person to come in and meet and greet her. So I think in this race, because in the all candidate debate meetings, it's me, the Liberal candidate, and the NDP candidate, and they can say whatever they want about it being a three-way race or whatever. I say to them, well, if you have internal polling that says anything different, please show us. But everything we see, this is a neck and neck race between the Conservative candidate, who isn't showing up for the job interviews, and me. And as I think most of my constituents know, if there's work to be done, I show up. I keep being elected Parliament's hardest working MP. That's something I embrace. I'm very, very, very proud of my record that I show up and I do the work, and I want to keep doing the work. And I sometimes tell my team, I'm not really superstitious, but I'm sort of stitious. So I'm sort of stitious enough not to say what I think is going to happen on Monday. But I do hope Paul Manley and Nanaimo Ladysmith, who's in a race quite like mine. Nanaimo Ladysmith is either the Conservative candidate or Paul Manley, and he's got the momentum. He was, of course, the MP from 2019 to 2021 and got the highest vote of any of the people running for Nanaimo City Council. He's an extraordinary parliamentarian, and I so want to be back in Parliament with him, with Mike Morris, with a number of other candidates. So I think April 28th is, as I said, I'm sort of stitious. We're having a gathering. I hope you'll all come, and details are available. I shouldn't probably broadcast where the gathering is, but it's going to be fun, and you can find out easily that we're going to be, and I'm really happy. Bill Henderson from Chilliwack is going to come and play a few tunes, and Lorna Crozier, one of Canada's most loved poets, will also be there, and a few other surprises. So we plan to have a good time. Win, lose, or draw, Greens still have a good time. So, yeah, and I'm really so proud of the work we've done. This is the work of volunteers across Canada. Our platform is the work of the Shadow Cabinet, the people who wrote this platform. First, we have to only follow Green Party policy as passed by all our members, and then the people who are on Shadow Cabinet are all running for office. So it's an amazing group, and they're all out there, like Anne-Marie Zedlik, who's our candidate in Guelph, 35-year family doctor in Guelph, and one of the first people in Canada, first doctors, to offer and open HIV/AIDS clinics back in the horrible day when it was still a stigmatized disease of HIV, being HIV positive. Anne-Marie Zedlik is our health critic. We launched our health plank together in Guelph a few weeks ago to say that every Canadian has a guarantee for a primary health care practitioner, family doctor, nurse practitioner, and team medicine options. And as she pulls out of her own practice to become a member of Parliament, she's creating a health hub in Guelph. And when we announced it, reporters said, well, that would take, I guess, some years for government policy. I said, no, I'm doing it. I'm opening a health hub in Guelph because I've got to take care of my own patients as I move into being a federal member of Parliament for Guelph. These are amazing people. It's a lot of hard work, and it's difficult because we know, and I'm not going to, you're here. Thank you for being here. But our platform hasn't gotten nearly the coverage of the status quo, very similar platforms offered by everybody else. So I do hope in the last few days when people are making up their minds, they'll go to our website, read our 2025 election platform, and know that to the extent we could. By the way, guaranteed livable income is not yet costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office. It's in our platform. And our disability benefit, not yet costed, but it's in our platform. But the Parliamentary Budget Office is still number crunching to give us the answers we want so that we have an authoritative source for our platform numbers for disability benefit and guaranteed livable income. It's amazing to me how hard the Parliamentary Budget Office works at this service for parties. We've been having daily meetings with our analysts at PBO, including Saturdays and Sundays. It's a hard-working bunch of policy experts available to political parties. So I'm real proud of the work that everybody's done on this platform. All right, sorry for going on. 1 question, 10 answers. I'm very sorry. Anybody else have any questions? Well, on y va. Oui, tout le monde sur le pont. Nous avons seulement 5 journées, 6 journées aujourd'hui, et encore heureuse journée de la Terre. This is Earth Day. It's a good day to point out that at least one federal political party with candidates in every province and the Northwest Territories and the Yukon has an innovative vision that actually can inspire hope. So people can go in the polls, vote green, and breathe while you do it, because you don't have to hold your nose when you vote for someone you don't really want. Breathe, smile, and vote green. Thank you.